Hey guys, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion. And I'm doing this one solo again. And this is a bit of an interesting one. It's actually more than a bit interesting. It's very interesting. A little bit difficult to do a discussion on because it's a very technical one, and quite a bit of it I don't personally understand. But we're gonna kind of just browse through it here, and I'll just mention things that kind of catch my eye and such. It is, I did read through the whole thing. It's very, very well written, very cool, but very technical. So, automated combinator pipeline. This is written by V, and so the group of entities that they're bringing to high resolution currently are combinators. And then I think shortly after that, wire connected entities as well. I remember them mentioning. So the main problem with them is the amount of shifting values needed. So we use a specific workflow, which I will try to show and explain today. Some of the parts have already been described in a previous Friday Facts, so I will only mention what is necessary for this article. I really like what he's done here. This is super cool. He's taken parts of Factorio and then overlaid program icons to demonstrate the process, which is actually really, really cool. So please fasten your belts, as this will be a ride full of automation. So essentially, they create their 3D, their models in Blender, which we'll show as we get down, and then they send it through Photoshop to do further kind of manual enhancements. And then after that, they send it through After Effects. And then once it's done there, they send it through a Python script or multiple Python scripts to kind of automate the process of combining all the layers and shadows and stuff together. And then they finally input it into the game also with a Python script, which is explained near the bottom, which is really cool. So scrolling down here, here it all starts. As you might already know, almost everything in Factorio comes from 3D models created in Blender. As we mentioned, this time I already had the Combinator models ready as we updated them relatively recently in 0.13. This closer view is really cool. These actually are more detailed than I really thought. When you get this close-up larger version, it's very, very neat. It really shows, right, the amount of work that they put into these, just graphically. I mean, the amount of detail is ridiculous. It's really cool. So in 0.15, they added all these new operations for combinators, which require additional display graphics, some of them having quite complicated shapes. So for some obscure reason, V thought he was afraid that the old matrix of light bulbs, so these things up here that displayed the settings, wouldn't be able to represent such detailed symbols. So I increased the resolution from 7 by 7 to 15 by 15. I wasn't too happy with the result at that point, but at that point in time, it was a big pressing factors. We just kept it. The thin lines, however, lose quite a bit of granular display nature, and they behave quite poorly when zoomed out. So like this, and then now they've changed it. Now when he's had a chance of revisiting combinators, he tried to redo symbols with 9 by 9. As I was thinking, well, I probably abandoned 7 by 7 for a reason, so let's not try this. However, he actually reverted back to 7 by 7 by changing a few other things, and this is kind of what it now looks like, which is way better. I actually really, really like how this looks. So that's really nice that he kind of just managed to get it back to its original size, but the display looks far better. And then we just kind of get into the process here. A lot of this, like I said, is very technical. I'm not sure there's much discussion to be had simply because, I'm not versed in most of this stuff. But it's very, very cool to see. Even for someone like me who doesn't actually understand or isn't versed in this, it's still a very cool read. So I definitely recommend reading through all of it. It gives you a nice behind-the-scenes kind of view of what they do, and it really blows me away when I was reading through this. Even though I don't really understand the programs and stuff they use, because I haven't used Blender. I've used Python very, very minimally, pretty much just to render my videos. But reading through, it actually is really, really fascinating how much automation they've put into the process, which I think is very apropos to Factorio. So it's really cool. We'll get down to that in a minute or two. So once the 3D model is prepared, I could get into rendering them very fast just by changing a handful of values. You can see that the original scene was already prepared for resolution doubling. Here we go. it's worth mentioning how the rendering system actually works. So this we will read through just because this part is kind of cool. It explains how the rendering actually works. So the Combinator objects are split into layers, separating horizontal and vertical models because they're different due to projection, and rotating them between frames 1 and 2 in time. So you can see an example here, and then also like all the files they have. You know, they have the vertical, horizontal for each Combinator, the shadows, vertical, horizontal for each Combinator, and the LEDs and such. And then down here they show everything is enabled in the scene so render layers can take from it. Layer 1 including everything except relevant objects to prevent glitches, and excluding everything except relevant object to prevent glitches and unexpected mess. This part lost me a little bit. Like I said, I'm not super versed in this. And then it just kind of shows their Blender process here. Blender is a program I really would like to, understand how to use if I had time. There's so much to it. The 3D modeling, it actually has a video editing thing, which I've played around with slightly, but didn't have time to actually learn enough to use. Very cool program. It's cool to know that they do use that because it's like open source, I think, and free. So, you can kind of mess with it yourself. So once they get all this done, once all that works, we just press one button to output everything. So then they bring it into Photoshop, as you remember in the first picture, and they say that many things can be achieved in a 3D program, but human touch in Photoshop is always a very vital step for the majority of their graphics, right? So they kind of go in and add, change little details by hand. They say since there's 12 Combinator variations, maintaining 12, files would become a pain sooner or later, so he just kind of puts them all into one big file. And it kind of just shows here the variations. You can see some things changing of what they add and such in Photoshop. And then as a special thing to mention, we also generate ground integration with drop shadow functions, which has to be merged into a single layer so it could be exported. The problem with this is that it has to be done manually. So again, doing it just once in one big Photoshop file is faster than 12. You can see here. And then they send it into After Effects. The place where everything fits together in After Effects, here we bring all the rendered outputs from Blender together with the mask exported from Photoshop. With some system, combine them into image sequences, which will later be processed by Python scripts. So then we come down here and just kind of a summary of the process. What I kind of just explained is render raw footage directly from Blender, Photoshop edit, applying the Photoshop mask, sequence, final positioning tweaks, output, separating the sequences into separate outputs for each Combinator type. The exact same applies for shadows, rotations, dance. So there you go. The After Effects pipeline is quite typical for all of our entities. The system can differ in complexity, but it's something similar. The special part here is that Combinators have a huge amount of shifting values for wire connections in Lua, and we need to somehow define them. To be more specific, we have so this is for all the red wire and green wire connections. They have the red wire input, green wire input, and then the red and green output, red and green input shadow, red and green output shadow, right? So there's a lot of different variations. Even though the constant Combinator doesn't have any input, it still totals 80 shifting values just for wire connections, which is crazy. Not even mentioning shiftings for the display, activity LEDs, and Combinator graphs themselves. So this is where he gets into the Python thing, which is really cool. Doing each part manually would be insanely tedious, time-consuming, and to redo it simply, you simply have to do it all over again, at which point you might as well just hang yourself with a red and green cable. Yeah, that sounds very painful. When we combine it all, in total we exceed 111 shiftings. Because we are proper lazy bastards, we have a special pipeline to prevent doing all this manually. Automation, anyone? I really like this. It's just the automated systems they come up with is super cool. So in After Effects, we take the centered sequence. So this is kind of just an example. On top, we put 1 pixel indicator for the wire connection points. You can see these little, hopefully you can see it on the video. There's red here, then there's green here, and then yellow here, and blue here, and here. The little teeny dots, and then the arrow is just for the debug to prevent mistakes for input and output directions, I guess. So then they do the shifting process. Sprite sheeter, we already mentioned multiple times that we by using a universal Python script to crop images and calculate the shifting required to recenter the crop picture. So again, they've like automated the process of, you know, cropping and centering the picture and stuff, which is really cool. And now they can use this tool to calculate wire shiftings for the combination of single pixel images from the previous step. This doesn't happen by itself. We need to tell SpriteSheeter what to do. We can casually generate the .bat command for SpriteSheeter by another Python script. The real Combinator sprites, activity LED and display sprites, also go through SpriteSheeter, outputting whole sprite sheets where possible, like for example those two. So here. And then for the Lua generation, if you have ever looked into the entities Lua and search for combinators, you probably notice there's quite a bit of code. More specifically, the whole file is about 12,500 lines, which is ridiculous. You know, so he says it's safe to assume that it could take me over 2 days to do all this manually. So he decided to generate the whole Combinator pictures.lua with another Python script automatically. You know, he kind of learned stuff while doing this. I even learned some stuff just reading this. So essentially, you know, he's automated this with the Python script and then copying it to Factorio, since there's quite a few things that can go wrong. And like if it accidentally gets placed in the wrong area or something, you know, doing it over and over manually, you can make mistakes. So they've also automated the process of doing this. It's very convenient to write another script which actually copies the files to the local Git repository. After that, it's just about starting the game, seeing how it works. And then in the game, after doing this a few times, it was time for automation, so I added a script which automatically triggers all of the 04 through 07 scripts, letting me just fix issues and see them in action with just one click. So it's really cool. They've automated like every step of this. It's really nice. I know this was technical. Some of you may not find this interesting. Some of you may not understand it. I didn't understand all of it, but I just think it's really, really cool to see behind the scenes of how they do stuff and just the level at which they've automated things. It kind of makes you wonder, like other game developers, you know, how many other game developers automate to this level? You know, I mean, and that like that's actually a question, is I wonder how many other game developers do. But it's just really nice to see, you know, kind of how they do things. You know, the whole process isn't exactly short, but automating the steps helps so much, especially when we get to the last step of really making it work right. At that point, it's extremely important to be able to say, we can change this, can we improve that? And your answer is, yeah, just change these two things and let it regenerate, you know, rather than doing each individual thing manually. It lets you focus on quality instead of thinking how much time it would take to do all the process manually. Again, he enjoys working this way, not to mention that every time I learn something new to make tools even better and faster next time. Doesn't that remind you of some game? Oh yeah. And then lastly, this community spotlight, and this is super cool. I'm not going to play this video. You know, in previous Friday Fact discussions, I don't play the videos for copyright reasons. But if you go here in this Friday Facts, as always, linked in the description, that this is a super cool tool. So if you guys have, like, if you read the subreddit at all or watch some YouTube, you've probably found it. These guys have made songs in Factorio with, you know, combinators and the programmable speakers. And now one of the guys who's made a lot of these has made a site, and I think I'm allowed to show this. I'm going to go out of full screen here. Sorry for all the crap on my navigation bar. And this is this site here. And what he's done is he's made this site, and what you do is you grab a MIDI or MIDI file. I'm not sure really how that, what that actually is. It's an audio file of some sort, into the requester chest to begin. And there's sites, there's many sites, I think, where you can get like these files of songs. That they have to be this file type, right? You can't do MP3s, but I think there's sites where you can convert MP3s to this. A quick Google search would show you. Anyway, you drag the file into here, and then it outputs, it like, you know, goes through it, and it outputs a blueprint that you can copy that has all the speakers, all the combinators required to play it, all set up, and you just import the blueprint into your game and just like turn on one constant combinator in the thing, and you can play the song. So this, for anyone who wants to, you know, make the songs in Factorio, you know, like make a song, you know, whatever, one of your favorite songs in Factorio, but don't know how to do it, this is your tool, because I'm going to play with it myself here over the weekend probably, because this is really, really awesome. You know, because I wanted to do that, and I have no clue how to do that. I'm horrible with circuit stuff. But now I just find the MIDI file for it, Minitorio, and drop it in here, and it does it for me. So there's a demonstration of it here. Again, I'm not going to play the video, but you should definitely check it out. It's also pinned on the subreddit as well, and really, really cool. Massive props to this guy for taking the time to make the website and the tool and get it all working. It's super, super cool. But that's it for this one, guys. I know it was technical, but I hope you enjoyed. I really enjoyed reading through this. If you haven't, I do highly recommend reading through all of this. V did a really nice write-up, and all these examples and stuff are really cool. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, feel free to leave a like. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.